Oh, alrighty, boob tubes, another one of Gabe's clips. So, America promised a response. They announced the response. What's it gonna be? So they're going to hit Iran, but Iranian targets, wait for it, inside Syria. That's now back in play. And Iraq. Fuck's sake, man, if we know, if the West no fucked that place up enough. Right, so you go into a country, completely fuck it up. I mean, the mission achieved. The goal was not to go in there and turn it into a thriving country. The goal was to go in there and turn it into a shithole and rape it of as much resources as you can. Anywho, so let's have a wee look at the BBC report.
Well, the Defence Secretary concluding a very lengthy news conference talking about it being a dangerous moment in the Middle East. He said it had been difficult days for the Department of Defence since Sunday's attack, which killed 3 service personnel in Jordan. Then there was that lengthy apology about that controversy about his hospital visit, being treated for prostate cancer, which of course the president was not told about. He apologised to the American president, to his team and the public. He gave a long explanation, but he said it was an explanation, not an excuse. We're listening to all of that. Nick Beake is in Jerusalem for us. Nick, let's return to the many comments he made on the potential US retaliatory action. Obviously minimal details, but what we've learnt is that the attacks over a number of days, there'll be a series of attacks, they'll be inside Iraq and Syria and crucially not inside Iranian territory itself.
Yeah, Matthew, I thought it was really interesting listening.
Well fucked up. It was Iran that done it, but we're going to attack Syria and Iraq, who coincidentally like, so who are they going to attack inside Syria? Well, like the targets that Israel's already been attacking. You know, what's it, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, military advisors or HQs, so on and so forth. Because they're coming out and saying it's going to be Iranian targets inside Syria.
To the US's top defense official there, outlining how the White House sees Iran as stirring things up in the Middle East. We've already heard from one of his colleagues how this part of the world faces a danger it hasn't seen for some 50 years. And Lloyd Austin there was making clear that he believed Iran was responsible for this through funding and supporting various groups across this region. Chiefly, some of the...
Just put up a YouTube short talking about how ISIS has recently been brought out of retirement, right? So, what the BBC, this is how I believe all media can steer the narrative, can steer the conversation by telling you half-truths. I don't think Iran denies funding a lot of these groups, you know, but the US, Israel and the West deny funding all their Abdul armies. You know, it's just ISIS pops up, whack-a-mole, we need to go in. They tried it in Syria. Russia called their bluff. Said, right, okay, ISIS is a problem. We're going to go in and fucking kill them. I'm like, no, they're all terrorists. We're meant to be killing them.
The groups that have been operating within Syria and Iraq. And of course, he said that it didn't really matter how much Iran knew about that specific attack at the weekend in which 3 American service personnel were killed. He said the fact that Iran are giving weapons and giving backing to these groups means that Iran is responsible, and that's why Iranian targets...
Okay. Using that logic, that means that the United States and the West military-industrial complex is responsible for what Israel is doing. Because Israel would not be able to do what they're doing without the munitions, etc., and support from the United States and the West. They wouldn't be able to continue doing what they're doing in Gaza, which a lot of people with a lot of brain cells out there are making arguments that it's genocide, if not just straight up ethnic cleansing. which has been going on in that area of the world pretty much since the Balfour Declaration was signed.
Will be looked at in the coming hours and days at a time of America's choosing, he was saying. But yes, you're right, there will be no strikes on Iranian soil. I think that was always seen as highly unlikely. The White House saying they don't want a wider conflict, they don't want to exacerbate things, but they do have to send a message. And of course, that sending a message extends to a few different things in the Middle East at the moment, notably the Houthi rebels who have been firing from within Yemen out towards the Red Sea. They say they've been hitting ships which are linked to Israel, the US, the UK, and they've been doing this in solidarity with the people of Gaza. And they say they'll continue to hit shipping until the fighting stops and Israeli forces withdraw. Clearly there's no sign of that happening at the moment. So there are concerns that with more military activity in the Middle East about escalation, but certainly America is setting out how it will respond after those deadly attacks at the weekend.
There's
but they say
the training video
manner, at the same time
of the Houthis on Yemeni TV. See the wee thing down the bottom right? I'm sick of seeing this fucking training video.
In Jerusalem, thanks very much for the perspective.
No context to just show that. That isn't what's happening in the Red Sea.
To all of that. And Tom, what was your assessment?
Well, let's talk about Iran first of all, because, you know, what is new today is that
the Houthis' attacks aren't international. They're all aimed at, unless the Houthis get fed bad intelligence, which they did when they attacked the Russian ship, they're all aimed at British, American and Israeli linked vessels.
Our colleagues at CBS News reporting that the approval has been given for strikes over a series of days, and crucially on Iranian personnel and facilities, but not inside Iran itself. Now, I think there's two things behind this.
So we're coming to get you, but we're going to wait until you're outside your house to fucking do you.
The fact that this information is now coming out, because what we heard from Lloyd Austin, as they always say, they're not going to sort of telegraph their military action. They're not going to speculate before it happens on exactly where maybe target.
They're not going to speculate on their military action. We're going to come out and hit Iranian personnel inside Syria and Iraq. That seems to be pretty much telegraphing it, you fucking dumb fuck. What the fuck planet? I don't know. I must have different ears to the world. I really must.
That's the very sort of public from the podium line. But this information is now coming out obviously from elsewhere in the administration, because I think what they want to do is to show to the Iran hawks here in Washington that they are going to respond decisively. It is coming, but they're kind of keeping things in a holding pattern, because people will be asking the question, well, why haven't there been any military strikes already since these 3 soldiers were killed at the weekend? So I think there's one thing to say about the targeting, and that is it's very notable that this does not mention Iran itself. That's what some Iran hawks here want to see, but it does talk about Iranian personnel and facilities in Iraq and Syria. Now that is still would be a very, very considerable action. There are Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Iranian personnel in parts of Iraq and Syria. So the targeting of them by the US would be significant. That is supposed to meaningfully deter further strikes against US personnel. But, you know, the fact is the reported approval here doesn't appear to be against Iran itself. They're trying not to draw in Tehran into a wider confrontation, direct action between the US and the Iranians. And I think it's important here that, you know, they've also mentioned the weather. And I think they talk about cloud cover. I think there is a suggestion this perhaps hasn't happened so far.
Global warming!
Because they haven't got the weather to guarantee the targeting. That's a kind of sidebar mention towards those more hawkish members of Congress that I mentioned. You know, they're perhaps suggesting this is why it hasn't happened yet.
Really briefly, Tom, I mentioned there a really lengthy apology for that hospital stay, that cancer diagnosis that he'd had, but he'd kept it from his department, the public and the president. He went a great length to go through the detail of all of that. This, I think, the first news conference he's actually had since all of that controversy blew up.
Right, I think, what controversy? He had cancer. Anyway, so let's see if we can see what Press TV or what's saying about it.
Forces say that vessel, which was headed for occupied Palestine, was hit with appropriate naval
Let's
missiles.
see if they talk about it in the headlines. There's that fucking training video again, man!
The World Health Organization says the population of Gaza is starving to death amid constraints on the delivery of humanitarian aid and continued Israeli air
I just looked at the top of our Al Jazeera headlines there and they didn't
and
cover it.
Increasing by the day as hostilities persist.
And it doesn't look like they're covering it either. Let's see if this works.
On Behishta Zahra Cemetery. 20.
I don't know how this works actually. Does that makes if that even makes any sense?
Each and every
Looks like you can rewind, but you
and
can't.
place
It just
has
keeps
its
going to
own
fucking
tale.
live.
Many of these tales sank
Anywho,
into oblivion.
I will leave it there. If I can find the booty. Where the fuck is
Others
this?
are
There we go. So America going to strike. Iranian targets inside Iraq and Iran in response to the 3 dead servicemen. Is that going to keep everybody happy? Who knows? Stay tuned for the next installment of World War III, brought to you by the Tinterwebs. World War III is a meme war. Get it? Got it? Good. Get cheese, no cats. Or cheese. Or Abduls, Adams, or Abrahams, or assholes were harmed in this filming. Clips. And remember, citizens, always subscribe. Hit the notification bell as well. And $19.95 plus shipping and handling will keep you out of hell.